This hearing of the Committee on Foreign Affairs will come to order. Today, we hear from the heads of the U.S. Agency for International Development and the Millennium Challenge Corporation, and together these agencies account for $21.3 billion, or 41% of the President's $52 billion international affairs budget request. Especially given our chronic Federal deficit, we must be rethinking how and where and why we provide foreign aid. To be justified, the bar is high. Aid must support our national security, and it has to support our economic interests. And it must be efficient, and it has to be effective. It must advance democratic principles and develop reliable trade partners. And it must be implemented in a way that breaks the cycle of dependency. Over the past decade, USAID has seen its mission chipped away. The Global AIDS Coordinator, who manages the largest U.S. global health program in history, is housed in the State Department. The MCC has been created as an independent agency with a mandate to reduce poverty through economic growth. So it has been a challenging time for USAID. Indeed, the Bush administration stood up MCC, Millennium Challenge, as an alternative, a way to break with the tired old development approaches that for decades have failed. But MCC has had its challenges too. So-called compacts in the early days were big, they were complicated, they were overly optimistic. This has improved some, but MCC must stay true to itself. Getting pulled into countries where you don't belong could ruin MCC's recipe for success. By demanding that countries we are aiding have good policies in place, by strictly monitoring and elevating impact, MCC has served as a lab for what does and does not work. It is getting countries on a path towards graduation from foreign assistance. And that is why many of the administration's new initiatives are borrowing from the MCC model. This is progress if it is well implemented. The President's proposal to reform the International Food Program, helping more at less cost, is a bright spot in the budget request. For much of our food aid, this proposal would remove conditions that commodities be U.S. bought and U.S. shipped. Studies have shown that these conditions only make for a slow and inefficient program, and I will add that in terms of being U.S. flag shipped, those ships are owned by a foreign carrier in Scandinavia anyway. It is elementary that buying food closer to where the humanitarian crisis is taking place is faster, it's cheaper, it helps save more lives. Only in recent years has the U.S. been able to experiment with a small pilot program to buy food close to the crisis. This local and regional purchase effort has been found to be 11 to 14 weeks faster. It's also been found to be 25 to 50% cheaper. Essentially, the administration's proposal would end a process called monetization. This is when Washington buys American grain, gives it to international charities, who in turn sell it in poor countries. Congress's investigative arm called this process inherently inefficient and found that it resulted in the loss of $219 million over 3 years. That's an average of 25 cents on every taxpayer dollar. It's not just the waste that should bother us, but the harmful impact of dumping such commodities, which can destroy local farming and, in turn, increase the dependency on aid that we'd like to see end. So I look forward to working with Ambassador Shaw as well as the ranking member to advance this ambitious and timely program. And I will now turn to Mr. Sherman of California to recognize him for his opening remarks.